Welcome, everyone. The event is now live. John, please take it away.
Thanks, Allison. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's live tech talk, Beyond Coding, how developers can leverage AI across the software development lifecycle. This event was organized by the hardworking folks at Pure AI, and it's sponsored by Harness, provider of an end-to-end software delivery platform that helps engineering teams achieve the highest levels of engineering excellence. I'm John K. Waters, editor-in-chief in the Converge 360 group of 1105 Media, and I'm joined today by Chinmay Gaikwad, Director of Product Marketing at Harness. Hi, Chinmay.
Hey, John. Nice to be here.
Good to have you, man. Chinmay is a technical marketing engineer with deep roots in the dev tools, cloud, and data center space. He spent time at tech giants like Intel and IBM, as well as nimble early stage startups, where he focused on everything from app security and observability to the ins and outs of Kubernetes. He brings a unique blend of hands-on technical expertise and real-world market insight to the AI and developer tooling conversation, and I'm really looking forward to talking with him. But before we get going, I have to do just a bit of housekeeping. This tech talk is being recorded for later access. Keep an eye out for an email with a link to that recording. It'll be coming your way in the next few days. Our sponsor has provided some extra resources you won't want to miss. They're available now on your console. And at the end of this conversation, we'll have a 5 to 10 minute Q&A. Please type your questions into the Q&A box as they occur to you, and we'll do our best to get to all of them. Okay, now I'm going to take just one more minute to sort of set the stage for our talk today. AI coding assistants have gained significant traction among software developers over the past few years, no kidding. In fact, industry analyst firm Gartner has predicted that by 2028, 75% of enterprise software engineers will be using them. But AI is transforming more than just code generation. Across the software development lifecycle, there's growing potential to use AI to reduce frustration, accelerate workflows, and improve quality far beyond the IDE. Today, I'll be talking with Chinmay about how AI is helping developers work smarter, not just by writing code, but by tackling everything from code search and pipeline debugging to test creation and security insights. We'll explore where AI is quietly transforming the software development lifecycle from build to deploy, and how tools like Harness are using AI across 15 integrated products to streamline, secure, and supercharge the entire delivery process. Okay, let's get started. So Chinmay, I'm sure you'd agree that the AI coding systems have come a long way. That's kind of, too obvious actually to say, but what's the biggest misconception developers still have about them?
Yeah, definitely. So AI coding assistants every day you hear news about how great AI coding assistants are, and you see new features being launched, you see new benefits being published. I think the biggest misconception we have seen when talking to developers is that they are accurate and are safe. And by that, I mean, it really depends on what kind of data they are being trained on. So if the AI agent is being trained on good code and secure code, then sure, you'll get good output. But if you have them trained on bad code or insecure code, then you'll have vulnerabilities in your code which can be exploited. So that's definitely one. And the second one essentially is LLMs have gained a lot of marketing over the last year. I think they are still very important, but LLMs we feel will become commoditized in the near future. So which LLM you select would really depend on the context. There will be no like one solution for everything. So just being true to an LLM, I think would be the biggest misconception. You should try to experiment with different LLMs and see which ones fit your use case.
So you heard that that prediction from Gartner about 75% of enterprise engineers using AI tools by 2028. What would you say is driving this momentum?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of factors driving this momentum. The first one essentially is FOMO, the fear of missing out on AI stuff. So definitely developers and companies want to explore the benefits of AI. That's why they are really pushing their engineering team towards it. But also there was, I think, a Stack Overflow survey done. I think I might have a quick slide about that. A Stack Overflow survey done last year, and it showed that there was overwhelmingly positive developer sentiment towards coding assistants. 80% plus developers said that they really benefit from AI assistants and it really made them productive. So there is data backing it as well. It's not all just marketing chaos. There's definitely a lot of developers who find it useful. Also, I've seen a lot of developers that I work with and the customers that I talk to, they have seen a lot of improvements in their own day-to-day life, right from learning a specific piece of code to increasing productivity. And then we've also seen a lot of AI-specific training content show up. So I think that has also sped up a lot of these adoption.
So there's a term that's come into my lexicon recently, developer toil. I'm wondering how you define it and how how does AI uniquely help eliminate it?
Yeah, so let's see. Okay, so here you go. So Gen AI we have seen is good at eliminating toil. And I reference Google's SRE handbook, which gives characteristics of a toil. So a toil basically is manual, repetitive, requires context switching, can be automated. And the last point is the most important one. It lacks the enduring value. So if a developer or a DevOps engineer are doing tasks that don't have enduring value for them, then they feel it's a toil. And I think AI can be really good at eliminating it because AI can do all of these manual, repetitive, and context switching work for them.
Fascinating. So it just sort of takes over, the toil part.
The toil part, yeah. And I referenced Google's SRE book. I highly recommend it. It's available for everyone to download if you just search for Google SRE handbook. It has a lot of details around what toil is, how can you define toil, and also how can you get rid of toil. So Google plug here.
That's good advice. Okay, so well, friction is another issue. What are some concrete ways AI is reducing friction when developers search large code bases?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we have seen a lot of things when developers search for large code bases. One of them is essentially something we call as semantic search, which basically is using natural language to search for large code bases. So consider a scenario. You have a new developer onboarding into a company. They are completely unfamiliar with the code of the company, so they should start learning about the code. And it might take days or weeks or even months for developers to become productive, depending on the organization. So with AI, they can actually search for a particular piece of code just using natural language. So for example, if let's say they're working on a login screen, they can just search where is the code defined for the login screen, and that AI would do contextual search for them, and they would get all the results accordingly. So that's one of the key things. I think an experienced developer can also use AI to essentially search across code bases because not all developers know all the code in a company. So definitely that's a good use case. And then I think one of the things that is very important is how do we do this essentially? So indexing large repositories that AI can search has become increasingly critical. And we do it at Harness. I've seen Google, GitHub do it as well. So indexing these repositories so that they can be semantically searched has become increasingly more important.
Okay, so eliminating toil, reducing friction. How about onboarding? How does AI help with faster onboarding, especially in complex or legacy environments?
Yeah, so again, in a complex or a legacy environment, just understanding the architecture or even the code becomes a huge task. So with AI, you can just query, what does this piece of code do? And you'd get a plain text answer, which can be beneficial in onboarding. In terms of the more CI/CD part of things, it's just creating pipelines using natural language would be extremely beneficial. So a developer, for example, starts from scratch and does not know how to create a pipeline. They can just say that, hey, I have a Java application. can you please build and test it for me using a particular CI/CD tool? And then AI can actually go and create those pipelines for them and then essentially help them become more productive.
I think you partially answered this question, but speaking of CI/CD, logs are notoriously hard to parse. How does AI change the game in terms of understanding and resolving pipeline failures?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you look at the whole CI/CD part of things, you have the IDE, you have the code repositories, and then you have the CI/CD part of things, which is build, test, and deploy. And essentially, failures can happen on any of these last three stages, build, test, or deploy. And it's very hard to figure out why the failure happened and what was the root cause of the failure. And one of the things, one of the data points that we have is logs. But sifting through the logs becomes a very manual process. So somebody has to sit down and go through all the logs and try to figure out where did this particular error come from. And it becomes a repetitive manual process. And as we saw, it's what toil is. And AI essentially can read through all these logs and try to figure out where did this error essentially come from. And then on top of that, you can also assign it to a particular team or create Jira tickets and help it get resolved very quickly.
Okay. You sort of hinted at this question a little earlier. Can AI be trusted to debug production level pipeline issues, or is human oversight still critical?
So the short answer is human oversight is still very critical. And there are multiple reasons for that. We have seen some of our customers use our AI in their production environment, but they are very careful about it. Since it's such a new technology, the trust level is still not there, even if AI is working as required. So essentially, a human who has an architectural overview and who also knows how CI/CD systems kind of work becomes extremely critical in this case. So they are definitely required to understand if the AI is working as required or as needed, and if they're intended to do their purpose. And then there are also other areas where human intervention would be very critical. Some of them would be essentially validating business logic. Business logic changes from teams to teams, from organization to organization. So a person there who has the whole context of the business logic can actually verify if things are working properly. Then there are also compliance issues depending on which geography you're based in. So they can be like GDPR issues or HIPAA issues, which the human intervention would be extremely critical for. And if the architecture changes, then again, a person with an architectural knowledge can definitely verify if AI is actually functioning properly or not.
So I'm wondering, what does intelligent automation look like in the context of deployment verification?
Yeah, so automation, so deployment historically has not been automated. It's been a very manual process. Just basically seeing if a particular piece of software is ready to be deployed or not. And then if it is not ready to be deployed, your customers essentially have a bad experience if it gets deployed, and then you'll have to go through the rigors of like rolling it back. So automation can be extremely useful in this case. And at Harness, essentially what we have done is we have integrated with different observability tools. So Datadog or OpenTelemetry or Grafana. And then we have asked the DevOps engineers to set their baseline for those particular deployments. So they can select many metrics. So for example, let's say latency is one of the metrics. And they can say that, hey, 3 milliseconds is the highest tolerance of latency that we can tolerate at this organization. And if it goes above 3 milliseconds, you should not deploy this particular piece of software. And then what we do in the background is we basically try to see if the latency has been exceeded or not. And then if it is exceeded, then we just roll it back. So in these situations, a lot of manual work is required to verify deployment, and AI can definitely be useful in this case.
So dynamic test generation sounds very powerful. How do AI systems determine which tests to prioritize?
Yeah, so testing is a very interesting case. I think I was a developer in my previous life, and writing tests was definitely not the favorite part of the job for me, to be honest, which should not be the case. But I think most of the developers lie in that bucket. So testing definitely does not get priority as much as it should, and it is of critical importance. So writing good tests is the first step, and then prioritizing which tests to run is another step. So I think AI can definitely help with writing unit tests and also integration tests, but prioritizing which test to run becomes an interesting problem to solve. One of the ways that I have seen prioritizing tests being solved is just checking which so whenever a developer writes a code and they push it to a continuous integration project, the entire suite of tests are run. That's not required. So just prioritizing which tests have been affected by that particular piece of code would be the first step. And to create that, essentially, what we have seen people do, or what we do, is essentially create a call graph of the tests associated with a particular piece of code. And if the particular piece of code changes, then the tests are also impacted by it and run those particular tests. And that's how you prioritize those tests. And you can skip all the rest of the stuff. And we have seen organizations save a lot of time just by prioritizing tests. They save up to 50% of their time, which in this world, as you know, everyone wants to move fast. So they definitely love that.
So how does AI-based relevance filtering differ from traditional test case management practices?
I think traditionally testing in general has been manual over the years. There have been some automated tools out there, but in general, testing has been a very manual process. AI can essentially help out with prioritizing different test suites based on the business logic that you give it, or even the piece of code that you want to prioritize it. So an organization has to set some context around what are the different pieces of code or products that are important for them, and then the AI agent can essentially prioritize those test cases. And it sounds simple, but it's a very complicated thing to do. But AI is decently good at reading code, decently good at reasoning, so that can definitely automate this process.
So security is often a reactive game. How can AI proactively surface and explain vulnerabilities in to developers in real time?
Yeah, security is an interesting, it's definitely an interesting product and definitely an interesting market. I used to work for an application security before, and what I've seen is generally developers, whenever they write code and there is a security issue flagged on their code, they either don't understand it or don't prioritize the security issue. And understanding a vulnerability is a key part of it. It requires a lot of specialized knowledge, and there are security researchers out there, the security engineers out there that actually can help with this. But so can AI. So there are like a lot of databases of security issues out there, and if an issue comes up in a developer's code, the AI can actually go and read the database and try to rationalize why it is important. And if enough context is given to it, they can also explain why this particular security issue is relevant for the developer's piece of code and how can they solve it. So remediation, explanation, and resolution are the three things where AI can help in security use cases.
Can you cite any examples where AI has significantly improved remediation times for CVEs or similar threats?
Yeah, we have, as do a lot of companies, have seen AI being used for security issues, and we have seen as much as 50% decrease in number of vulnerabilities by our customers using AI for explaining security issues and remediating them. So there are a lot of use cases out there as well. At the previous company I used to work for, they have also seen these use cases, and AI's popularity has gone up amongst organizations as they've started trusting it more. So definitely a huge chunk of improvement when they use AI on the security stuff.
Okay, so now help us understand how a fully AI augmented software development lifecycle looks from build to deploy.
Yeah. So let's see. We talked a lot about coding side of things.
Right.
So we know there are a lot of coding assistants that help with increasing productivity and stuff like that. But then there is also code repos that can be improved with AI. And we talked about the semantic search and onboarding new developers and helping them understand code. So that is another aspect of things. So AI can definitely be useful in that. And there are also other trivial tasks like summarizing a pull request or writing comments for a code, which AI can be used for in this case. Um, the other one would be on the build side of things. On the build side of things, the examples of Toil are pipeline creation and debugging pipeline failures. Um, I briefly mentioned that AI can help with pipeline creation. We have actually done this a lot of, done this testing a lot of internally. And we have seen that our developers actually use AI to create a lot of pipelines for complicated use case. And it would have taken them at least like a week to get that pipeline approved. But with AI, they can usually do it in a day. That's a lot of savings. Debugging pipeline failures. We talked a lot about logs, and so debugging pipeline failures is a use case for that as well. And then in terms of testing, there are like, as I mentioned, testing has been a manual process. So there are like so many opportunities to improve testing, right from creating testing to maintaining tests. We talked about prioritizing test cases and test suites, running relevant tests. And then we also talked about security stuff, so vulnerability explanation and remediation. And then finally in deploy, again, prioritizing debugging pipeline failures. And we also talked about verifying deployment status using your metrics that you can feed to the AI as data. So I think in this way, it's a very simplistic view right now, but in this way, you can actually have an end-to-end automated system.
Awesome. That was great. So how does AI reshape the handoff between dev and ops teams in a DevOps environment?
Yeah, the dev and ops side of things are interesting. It depends on how organizations are structured. In a lot of use cases, the handoff is provided without context. So, for example, a developer might just say that, hey, this is a piece of code that I've developed, and you have to run a pipeline for it, and the pipeline fails, and the DevOps team does not have any context around it. So AI can definitely help provide DevOps teams the context about the code and why this code is important and what this code does. And at the same time, AI can also help explain the DevOps side of things to the developer. So it can basically help the dev and ops teams to collaborate much better and understand the context just by using AI. And in this way, once the collaboration is there, you would achieve speed as well.
Okay, if we talk a little about Harness.
Yeah.
So I understand that Harness now integrates AI across 15 products. Can you share some examples where those integrations work together to dramatically improve delivery speed?
Yeah, for sure. So with Harness, the way we think about AI is not only improving the inner loop, which is generating the code, fixing pipelines, all the stuff that we talked about. It's also about improving the outer loop, which essentially means prioritizing privacy, prioritizing which data is being used to train the AI. So because a lot of our customers are on the enterprise side, federal companies, banks, etc., data is essentially very critical for them, and we want to make sure that we don't train on any proprietary data as such. So we have had recent history of AI. So we started off as a continuous delivery company in 2018, and the continuous verification feature in which we use machine learning to essentially see the impact of a particular release was the first one that we brought to the market. And then we did test intelligence, which is basically selecting which tests to run using AI in 2021. And then, as you know, in 2023, the Gen AI stuff blew up. So we invested a lot in Gen AI as well. And then the day to day, we have a lot of AI agents that help with coding, DevOps, as well as testing.
It's a fascinating timeline. So let me ask, what kind of capabilities are embedded directly into Harness pipelines?
Yeah, there are a lot of capabilities embedded directly. So we have a lot of agents that we use to essentially accelerate the software pipeline, right from, as I mentioned, coding agents. So it's similar to Codium or GitHub Copilot. We also have a QA agent, which helps with testing. We have an AI DevOps agent as well, which helps with creating pipelines, debugging errors. Then we have FinOps agent as well, which helps with cloud cost optimization. And then we also have an AppSec agent, which basically helps with security stuff. And we have a lot more in development, which I can't talk about right now, but yeah, definitely.
So this evolution is like a warp speed evolution, and I'm wondering what risks you might point out to over relying on AI in the software development lifecycle, especially for critical systems.
Yeah, so for us, we want to make sure that the software delivery is as fast as possible, but also as secure as possible. And essentially, we are using AI to do that. What I generally recommend to customers or our users is just make sure that if you're using AI from anybody, be it Harness or anybody, it is actually achieving the purpose that you want it to achieve. I've seen a lot of companies who just use AI because other companies are using it and the developers want it, but they don't have ultimate goals or metrics to track why they really want AI. So tracking the end goal of using AI, and it can be how you measure developer productivity, how you measure software delivery life cycle, and stuff like that can be extremely important. One of the small examples that I can give is developer productivity can be measured in different ways, and it can just be like how many pull requests a developer has committed, or how many lines of code a developer has committed. And many people don't agree with that. Many people agree with that. So it kind of depends on the organization that you're in and what priorities you set for yourself. So just defining those metrics properly and measuring them, I think, would be an extremely important step there.
Okay, so how does your company, Harness, ensure AI doesn't amplify technical debt or propagate bad patterns?
Yeah, so what we do is in terms of, so there are like multiple levels to this. The first one is what data are we using for training? So we are extremely cautious with what data we use. And since Harness has a long history of supporting software delivery and software development, we have essentially a library of best practices that we use. And those are derived from customer experiences or our own experiences, and does not have any customer data or our data, just a library of best practices that, for example, how should an ideal pipeline look like? So we have created like a template of like how an ideal pipeline should look like. So we just use that, basically that data to train our AI. And then in terms of LLMs, we essentially use whichever LLMs work with different use cases. So we try to make sure that there are hundreds of use cases in software delivery. We have to make sure that our users get the best LLM for that particular use case. And so a lot of internal testing has been done, a lot of data training has been done. And then we also have a prompt engineering team, which tries to understand the intent of the user when they're typing in the natural language prompt. So we also try to make sure that we optimize prompts.
You know, one question I get asked a lot is it's around the idea that the question of will AI level the playing field for smaller dev teams, or simply widen the gap between tech haves and have-nots? What do you think?
I think I was kind of expecting that answer, and I think the answer is yes in the long term. And we've also seen like some use cases in here. So as you know, this article was like published a few weeks ago, and 25% of Y Combinator startups are letting AI write 95% of the code. And okay, there are like some caveats to this if you read the entire article, but it's a significant data point. Anecdotally, I've also seen a lot of founders using AI to write code. So it's definitely leveling the playing field for startups to catch up with the coding and delivering of applications faster. And I think it will keep on doing it over the next few years.
I love the way technology nomenclature evolves, and vibe coding is another
Yeah.
one I've been hearing a lot about lately.
Yeah.
I guess I only have one more question for you. Looking ahead, where do you think we'll see the next breakthrough in applying AI to software development?
There are like so many areas right now. It's kind of impossible to point out on one. But I think right now the hottest topic I think would be MCP, so Model Context Protocol that Anthropic kind of released. It's for me, it's basically something similar to APIs. So, for example, if you have, let's say we are developing an AI agent and we create an MCP server, so other companies or our customers can use that and extend their functionality, which helps them communicate better. Essentially, one of the personal projects that I use MCP for is essentially if I'm doing some analysis and I have Google Sheets in there, I can just ask AI to talk to Google's MCP server and analyze the data in Google Sheets and give me the results. So yeah, definitely interesting times in terms of MCP. But there are so many other areas like agentic AI and stuff like that that can be very interesting in the near future.
Feels like we're on a fast-moving train. That's all the questions I have, but we've got some questions from attendees. I want to remind you guys, you can type your questions into the Q&A box at any time. We'll do our very best to get to all of them. Let's start with a question here from Al, who's wondering, what are some of the biggest concerns you have come across for adopting AI within organizations? We kind of talked about that a little bit, but maybe.
Got it. I think some of the biggest concerns that we have seen is really around data and data privacy. So as I mentioned, a lot of companies are skeptical about which data is being used for training these AI models and where is this data stored. There are so many regulations about where you can store the data and stuff like that. So nobody wants to get involved or get penalized for compliance stuff. So they are very careful about that. And then the other area is essentially how is this particular AI relevant to my particular organization? So just being contextual is some of the other two concerns I've seen come across.
Okay, this one's from Paul. How could more autonomous agents shape software development lifecycle workflows in the future?
Okay, that's a good question. I think agents are definitely the future, and that's why we are building an army of agents internally as well. But just keeping track of these agents is pretty hard. So what I've seen is somebody out there just creating a library of these agents. So similar to like a marketplace where you can go and search for a particular tool, you can actually go and search for a particular agent and see if they are useful for you. So essentially, if once you find that agent, you can actually rate that agent and stuff like that. So it's becoming like, I don't know if you've used TaskRabbit before, but it's like becoming like a TaskRabbit. And AI agents can definitely, you can rate them and you can rehire them if you want. So it's become very interesting in that case.
You sort of answered Perry's question. I don't think we're ignoring you, Perry, but do you have any interesting examples of multi-agentic systems? You want to sort of elaborate?
Yeah, I think, let's see, the few like popular ones are pretty interesting. I used, it's called Deep Search, I think, from OpenAI a lot to do my research. And I think it's very fascinating that regardless of the prompt that I give, and it gives me a list of reasons what it is doing, and it is optimizing and stuff like that. So I think that use case was very interesting for me. And one of the personal anecdotes that I have is I was like planning a trip to London recently, and I just had like this entire thing in my head where I was like, I want to do this, and I just gave that prompt to Deep Search, and Deep Search just went out and created a whole itinerary for me. And that's like a very basic use case. but it was pretty comprehensive, and it took like 5 to 10 minutes to come up with everything, where I could have like spent like days doing the same thing.
And the productivity is just astounding. Okay, we've got, looks like we got one more from Sunny, who's wondering, so many companies are developing AI tools for software development. How do I evaluate which ones to consider?
That's a tough one. But I think in general, what we have seen is whenever we talk to customers or users, we generally try to evaluate what are they trying to get out of this, and do they have a clear roadmap or a clear set of metrics that I'm measuring against, and if they do, then actually do we fit into that use case? If not, then obviously it's not a good match. So just like having clarity on your side on like what are you trying to achieve with AI,
Right.
what metrics are you trying to measure, and then evaluating different vendors against that would be the first step.
Okay. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for this episode of our Tech Talk. I want to thank Chinmay Yakwat for an informative conversation, and many, many thanks to the folks at Harness for making this conversation possible. Really enjoyed talking to you folks. Really enjoyed talking to you, Chinmay. You're a very knowledgeable guy.
All right. Thanks, John. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.